Hey, well, firstly, kia ora, good morning, everybody. Great to be here. Can I just say thank you for coming out to Simeon and my local beach. It's also great to have Matt Doocey, our Associate Minister for Transport, with us as well. This is a beach I spent a lot of time on myself as a kid growing up here in Howick, and it's pretty special to be able to make this announcement here today. Today we're here to announce a much needed funding boost for our frontline emergency responders who keep people safe at the beach and on the water. Heading to the beach, the lake or the river is for a day of fun and on the water is actually a part of the Kiwi way of life, and particularly in summer. And with that comes inherent risk, and Surf Lifesaving New Zealand and also Coastguard New Zealand do absolutely critical work to ensure people can head home from their day in or on the water safely. These frontline organisations save lives every day, and they do very important work in preventing water incidences and delivering water safety education. And that's why today we are announcing a funding boost for Surf Lifesaving New Zealand and Coastguard New Zealand of almost $64 million over 4 years. Both organisations are facing significant cost pressures, and our government's investment will ensure that they can continue their work, saving lives and keeping people safe. I'll now pass to Minister Brown to talk you through more of the detail of the announcement.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you, Matt Doocey, who is the Minister responsible for search and rescue. The government has approved a funding package of $63.6 million over 4 years in this year's budget for Surf Lifesaving New Zealand and Coastguard New Zealand, two frontline agencies providing critical water safety services that are delivered almost entirely by volunteers. As the Prime Minister has said, like many parts of the country, both organisations are facing across-the-board cost increases. At the same time, New Zealand has a tragically high drowning toll, and services of frontline agencies keeping people safe in and around the water are needed more than ever before. Around 4,000 lifeguards volunteer at Surf Lifesaving New Zealand. They provide an essential public service that New Zealanders rely on local beaches every summer, carrying out close to 31,000 preventative actions in the last year. The additional funding for Surf Lifesaving New Zealand will be used for lifeguard training and gear, beach and coastal safety initiatives, and maintaining and upgrading club buildings up and down the country. Coastguard New Zealand has around 2,000 volunteers and rescues over 6,000 people who get into trouble every year. The additional funding for Coastguard covers personal protective equipment, critical marine communications equipment, continued provision of emergency call-out rescue services for recreational boat users, and also upgrades and some new bases as well. Demand for Coastguard is growing, and the extra funding ensures they can continue to deliver their essential prevention and rescue services. I want to thank all of those on the front line at Surf Lifesaving New Zealand and Coastguard New Zealand for the incredible service they provide to the public. The government is committed to ensuring they have the resources they need to keep up their great work, saving lives on the water and reducing the high drowning toll. Thank you very much.
Great. With that, happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, it's for Surf Lifesaving New Zealand, so this money obviously will be going towards those services right across New Zealand, whether on the North Island, the South Island, right across New Zealand.
70 different clubs.
So it's $19 million for Coastguard, it's $44 million for Surf Lifesaving New Zealand. Effectively, it's about funding those critical pressures that they've got on their baseline to make sure they're able to continue to operate, but also invest, as I said, in that equipment that's really important for their frontline services, such as what we see behind us. That's right. So part of the budget bid, I think, was for 4 new Coastguard facilities or bases as part of it, such as one at Mangawhai. I think there's 3 others as well. So this will be going into new bases, as well as making sure that Coastguard bases across New Zealand have that support that they need to be able to do that really important work they do.
What about some of those other issues around like the 1-1 call system not being able to tap into, Coastguard not being able to tap into that 1-1 call system, we've seen people drown as a result of that, ambulance being sent up and taking longer than Coastguard would be able to.
Yes. So there's obviously money in here around telecommunications. There's other issues that need to also be worked on to get better comms behind the scenes, and that's part of the work that Matt Doocey's involved with.
So Minister Doocey, do you envision that the Coastguard will be able to tap into the 1-1 call system?
Yeah, clearly there's some funding around communications that we're announcing today, and I just want to acknowledge the volunteers we have here today. who deliver thousands of volunteer hours every year. Minister Mark Mitchell is leading on some work around emergency response, and clearly we want that to interface with this announcement today.
So when will that be applied?
I don't have a time frame for you today. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any targets for lowering the number of drownings as a result of this?
Well, I mean, ultimately there's a tragic number. I think it was 90 deaths. There's a lot of work that's done by WaterSafe New Zealand around reducing that. We want to see a reduction in those numbers over time. The reality is this is about making sure we fund those critical services so that the operations can happen. And without it, we would have seen a huge reduction in service levels. So this is really, really important. If we are going to reduce that death toll on our water, this is a really important part of actually addressing that.
In Surf Life Saving's case, I know a lot of their buildings, their infrastructure is really quite run down.
Yeah.
Confident this is enough funding to upgrade it?
Well, this will go a long way towards helping. I think they've got a plan over the next 10 years for, I think, 74 of their bases to do upgrades. This will provide funding towards a number of those base upgrades that are required. Ultimately, there's a real pressure on that particular building costs going up. So this deals with those cost increases that they're facing, and a big part of it will be around upgrades to buildings.
Any idea of how it will be prioritised? Will buildings
I think the information I've got, I think around 50% of it will be going into sort of capital upgrades. Ultimately, those details will need to be worked through by Surf Life Saving New Zealand and Coastguard New Zealand as they address those pressures according to their priorities. This is about making sure they've got the funding to be able to do that.
just on the Eastern Busway,
Yes.
infrastructure transport in this area, Auckland Council pulling funding for the final stage of that. Obviously, this is your electorate. Your response to that?
I mean, ultimately, we've allocated in the draft government policy statement funding towards that. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the council if they to fund their share of that particular project. The regional land transport program will be put forward, I think, by them soon, and then that goes into the national land transport program, which gets negotiated over coming months. So there's a long way to go on that.
Public Service Finance Minister in the budget speech saying that the savings have been made. How many more job cuts can we expect in the budget?
Look, we don't. I don't have a number for you right now, but what I can say to you is, as we've committed to, we've said we want 6.5% to 7.5% savings out of the different agencies. We are, pleased to commit that we've got $1.5 billion worth of savings each and every year. That exercise has been good. A lot of our approach has been saying, look, we want the agencies to deliver outcomes, and how they organise their resources to deliver those results and those outcomes is what is up to them to do that.
Does that mean that all of you've locked in the 1.5 billion, does that mean that all of the public service savings have been made, all of the job cuts are locked and loaded?
Well, you'll see in the budget, we've got 2 weeks to go to the budget. As you know, there's some budget sensitivity, and we won't go into detail until the budget night. But what I can say to you is we are also wanting to see an ongoing discipline being built into the public service to make sure that taxpayers' money is treated respectfully. And so we want every dollar that's raised actually deployed towards delivering improved outcomes in New Zealand. And that has been a big mindset shift, certainly for the public service under this new government, is that it's not just about the money you have and the headcount that you have and the activity and the programs you have. That's all activity. We're interested in achievement, and the result is we're starting there and then saying you use the resources to deliver those outcomes that we're holding you accountable to deliver for. Sorry?
Could you increase the savings target for public service?
Well, again, I just expect a daily habit of actually saying, does this money actually deliver those outcomes, yes or no? And if you're a CEO... Sorry?
Are more cuts coming is what I'm getting at?
Well, what I'm saying to you is I'm expecting a culture to be in place, like I see in many other parts of the economy, where the public service is very clear from our government about the expectations and the outcomes we're expecting them to deliver, what we expect them to achieve, and then actually what activity they undertake, how they organise their money, how they organise their staff to deliver those outcomes is exactly what I want them to do. I expect them to be making sure that when we have dumb programs, wasteful programs, heavy management structures, too much bureaucracy, they will consistently be looking to take the money out of that and put it into the front line. As I said yesterday, what's been really interesting to see is that we've got $1.9 billion, for example, going into corrections. Over $440 million of that has come from savings across corrections, and we've added another $1.5 billion to it to have a $1.9 billion budget that actually is going into the frontline services and corrections. And they've done an exceptionally good job. They have over 100 different programs in corrections, and they've gone through them and started to say, hey, listen, which ones of these ones are not actually delivering the outcomes or improved rehabilitation that we're expecting to see? That's exactly the mentality that I'm expecting the agencies to have on an ongoing daily basis from here on through.
Is there an update on where things are with the pay negotiations with the police, the arbitration process?
Look, at the moment, as you well know, we added another $250 million. It was difficult for us to find that extra funding, which we did do over and above what the Labor government had offered the police. That was rejected by the police in their vote. It now goes towards an arbitration process. I think the outcome of that will hopefully be known sort of end of June, early July. Well, if I had some extra time, I would. Yeah, I just am a great admirer of surf lifesaving. I've visited many of the clubs across New Zealand. They do incredible work. The work that they do training young people in surf lifesaving is incredible. I just encourage you to get out and see it. It's an amazing process when you see young people so committed to their Saturdays and their weekends being spent volunteering in that way. And the same with the Coastguard. Obviously, Simeon and I've got to know the Coastguard folk here pretty well over recent years. We're very proud of what we've got out here in Howick, but it's across the whole country. And I've been a recipient. I've done of the education programs where I've done a day skippers course and things like that. And the training and the education is just brilliant. And I think gives a lot of boaties a lot more confidence. So I just encourage them to sign up, become members of the Coastguard, and to look at the education programs and see whether you can upgrade your skills on the water too.
Better access to gender-affirming surgery after...
Sorry, say that again?
Surgeons have called for better access to gender-affirming surgery after attempting to remove their own breasts following a YouTube instruction. And what can the government do to improve access to such surgery to avoid situations like this?
Oh, well, look, I'm not aware of those comments at this point, but what I'd say to you is in the budget, you're going to see a lot more money being spent in healthcare in general. You're going to see us spending money on health and education and law and order. That's what New Zealanders expect us to do. They want better services, particularly in those three areas, and that's what our budget will deliver.
Horrible news.
Sorry.
Horrible news with the death of FMP's Mark Cunning's son. What was your reaction to the news?
Look, I mean, I it's incredibly tragic and sad, and I've passed my remarks privately to Mark, and I'd leave them there. Yeah. Okay.
And it's a pink shirt day today, obviously.
Yes.
And we know bullying is quite a problem in schools, but where do you see the government's role in addressing bullying in our workplaces?
Well, look, I mean, certainly in schooling, it is a problem, and part of why we've got instituted the mobile phone ban is actually we want our kids focused on learning. We don't want any distractions, but actually that has been a big focus. Is there's a lot of cyberbullying that happens, as you well know, on online platforms, and so actually diminishing. We're actually hearing from principals and teachers already that they're seeing less of that in their schools. That's a good thing, but again, it's about a day like today is important because it's about reminding people about, hey, listen, we have a problem with bullying around the world. We have a problem with bullying in New Zealand, and it's actually about people checking their behaviours and thinking about it for themselves. Okay. Yeah, look, we're committed to what we've talked about in the past, and the challenge that we've got in this budget, frankly, is we've got a lot of moving pieces. We've had to deal with things like Farm Act not being funded, as you know, with expired funding that the previous government had put in place, and we'll have more to say about that at the budget. No, we're committed to those things. It's just working out how we deliver that, given we've got a lot of pressure in this budget and a lot of things that we've got to be able to deal with, given the fiscal challenges that we've encountered. Again, you'll hear about it in the budget in 2 weeks' time, but I'm just saying, we're committed to those programs and our commitments in that space. It's just a question of how we deliver them when we've got a budget that's actually got to do quite a few things and deal with quite a lot of financial challenges, and then we'll reveal it more at budget day.
Great.
Okay. Look, we've got very strong policies around that, around TikTok in particular, and as I said, we've been taking advice right from the beginning when TikTok emerged here in New Zealand, and it's very clear, explicit guidelines about not using TikTok on government equipment. Okay, thanks so much, team. Go and enjoy the rest of the day.